You know, as a Swedish person, well, I think any Scandinavian person probably, when you travel and tell people where you come from, most often it becomes kind of clear that people around the world seem to have the impression that Sweden is, well, sort of utopia. Like, I'm being serious. Numerous times I've been told this exact word, utopia. So is it? Okay, I looked up the definition of utopia just now, and a utopia is defined as an imagined place or state of things in which everything is perfect. So since Sweden is neither imagined nor perfect, no, Sweden is not a utopia. So what's with this rumor then? Why do so many people seem to think that Scandinavia is such a nice place to live? Well, I guess it has to do with those studies that they publish every year, you know, the kind like the happiest people on the planet, the safest places to live, kind of studies where like the Nordic countries are always really high up. And if you see photos from Stockholm, you know the streets are clean and people dress nicely and there are cute cafes. Like, it seems to be like a happy, safe place, you know what I mean? And maybe it's easy to think that like Scandinavia being a good place is because the Scandinavian countries are rich and that's the reason for it. And don't get me wrong, the Nordic countries are rich, all right, but like not in the way that you might be thinking. It's more complex than that. And this might surprise you to hear, but like the richness of Sweden does not mean that people have like really high salaries and fat bank accounts. Like the richest of Sweden comes from low inequality and like state-owned institutions. And oh yes, high taxes. Basically, if you ask me, Sweden is a great place to live because of its history of like democratic socialism and like the snowball effect that this has had on the culture and on the people. So to prepare for this video, I stumbled on the most fascinating article. I will link to it in the description if you want to take a look. Basically, the article discusses what it means for a country to have a high level of trust. So every year they ask people of all countries like this question. Generally speaking, would you say that most people can be trusted or that you need to be very careful in dealing with people? And based on the replies, they make this map of how trusting a country is. And to no one's surprise, the Nordic countries, you know, take all the top spots. Oh, and China is also up there. So those are the countries where 60% or more of people say yes, people can in general be trusted. Also high up, like around 50%, are the Netherlands, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Switzerland, New Zealand, and Canada. You should go check this map and look for your own country because I think it's so interesting and like explains a lot about different cultures. But okay, so what does this actually mean? I mean, besides from being like mentally lovely to be able to trust your neighbor and your government and your doctor and, you know, your internet provider, it also has an economic effect. So it seems there is a correlation here where the countries with a high level of trust also has higher economic growth because low trust means higher reluctance to invest or do dealings with each other, which makes sense, you know. So on the other hand, and this is where it gets most interesting if you ask me, the countries with highest level of trust have, listen to this, by far the lowest level of economic inequality. So the lower the wealth gap, the higher the trust. Now, both David and I grew up in like a social democratic Sweden, and both of us come from really humble backgrounds. Like neither of us come from wealthy families, and we have both grown up in like working class communities. So if you look at Sweden overall, we both come from like the lower income spectrum of Swedes. But what does that actually mean? Well, to be completely honest with you, for us, it has meant almost nothing. Because being like upper working class or lower middle class or higher middle class or indeed lower upper class, it kind of is the same thing in Sweden. Of course, when we grow up, like things like how nice your clothes were or how often you went on holiday or how big your TV was, sure, those things like varied in different households, but not to the sense of like trust in society or trusting your neighbors. But the thing is, I never really understood or thought that I was lower income growing up. I mean, I knew we couldn't afford a lot of new clothes or going abroad every year, but like, kind of so what? Like, it wasn't like other people around me lived in luxury. Honestly, I don't think I met like a truly upper class person until I was like, what, 15? I grew up in a country where education, healthcare, elder care, childcare was more or less free. So it was clean and safe and like great infrastructure, very organized, low crime rates. Like I feel like being a child in 90s Sweden, I wish that for every single human. It has made me and David become trusting, naive, safe, confident people with a strong sense of justice and equality and what that means for a country. But now I want to give a big thank you to BetterHelp for being a paid partner in this video. With winter in full swing, it's that time of year when I always try to be mindful of not overexerting myself. Like, the cold months can be particularly challenging, I feel, especially if you're juggling a demanding job or studies or running a business. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and stressed and like even on the edge of burnout during this season. Whether you're facing a clinical mental health issue like anxiety or depression, or you're struggling with like the extra pressures that winter can bring, therapy can be a powerful way to regain balance. That's why I'm so glad to be partnering with BetterHelp. Their goal is to make starting therapy more accessible by providing a convenient online platform that can match you with a licensed therapist in just a few days. BetterHelp makes it easy to connect with a therapist from the comfort of your own home. All you need to do is answer a few questions and they will match you with a highly qualified therapist. Plus, their customer support is always there to help if you have any questions. You can choose to have your sessions via phone, video or messaging, whatever feels right for you. If you think therapy might be helpful, you can click the link in my description or visit betterhelp.com/mustard to get 10% off your first month. Thanks again to BetterHelp for supporting this channel. If you've been thinking about trying therapy, now could be a great time to start. So let's get back to the video. Okay, so what does all this mean? Well, I think that the sense of trust, the like relatively small wealth gap, the high taxes, and like the ability for most people to belong to the middle class, like at least financially, that's like the way to build the happiest, safest, and most fair society. Like, back when I was a student and David worked in a supermarket, financially we were like lower middle class. We lived well and could save money each month. And I think like this is extremely unusual that you could be a university student without like any wealth in the family and still belong to the middle class. But this sense that like you don't have to be born wealthy or work really hard pulling yourself up by the bootstrap, you know, American dream kind of lifestyle to have a really good life. In fact, listen to this because it's even shocking to me myself. So before we left Sweden, neither David nor I would ever think of choosing an education or a career based on salary or like financial opportunities. Isn't that weird to think about? But honestly, money never factored in at all when I was thinking about what to study at uni and like picturing what type of job I wanted afterwards. I kid you not, I didn't think about it. I only thought about what interests me and what would be emotionally satisfying to like spend my days doing for the next 40 years. So I studied biology, which is like the worst education you can pick if you want to make money. Same with David. He decided to study film theory than film production because it's his passion, and definitely not because he thought it might be financially smart. Because when we grew up in Sweden, it was like you choose your education, you go get your free degree, then you get a job, and then you will automatically make like an okay salary. Then you will like earn a little bit more as the years go by, and you will save a little each month, then buy a small apartment, then upgrade that to a slightly bigger one a few years after, and so on. And if things go according to plan, you will buy a little summer cottage somewhere when you're like 40. So choosing your education and career, can you imagine making that decision if money didn't really factor in? Because truthfully, for me and David, it never really was a consideration, like at all. Growing up, I never thought that I'd be really poor, and I never thought I'd be very rich. Like, if almost everyone around you belongs to the middle class, financially anyway, then money kind of stops being a motivation. So we're all already having it really good. So you might as well work with something that interests you and makes you happy. Of course, there were people in like Northeast Sweden who wanted to be rich and like chose degrees because of that. But I'm trying really hard to think back to the conversations that I had with relatives and friends and schoolmates about career decisions. And honestly, I can't remember a single person talking about choosing career with money in mind. It to me sounds now almost fantastical, like I was a different person back then or something, before money started being a thing in my life. And honestly, I think this is also one of the factors why Swedes trust each other more, is like, if no one is scrambling to make a huge amount of money and become rich, then a lot of the like money grabbing, backstabbing, using other people to get what you want attitudes just disappear. This also comes back to crime rates and corruption and all that, because if very few people in a country is poor enough to become truly desperate and feel like society is screwing them over, And at the same time, very few people are rich enough to think that they're above the law and that they're untouchable because of wealth and connections. Of course, it means that two huge reasons for crime and corruption disappears. Desperation on the one hand and superiority on the other. So if almost no one is like looking up at society feeling that they're not allowed in, and almost no one looks down on society like they're superior, but instead the vast majority of people feel like it's in their grasp to have a nice safe home, free education and healthcare, and a bit of disposable income to spend on things that make them happy. So basically feeling like they are a part of a society that is working. Of course that will affect not only trust levels, but like happiness overall. And I think this is connected to the Scandinavian fascination with interior design and fashion and good food and all of that, because all those things are like a fascination with like a good life in general. And we do tend to think that a good life is not just within our grasp, but it's like our human right. But like, I don't mean fashion and interior design as in brand names and luxury items. And I don't mean good food as in fine dining. I mean like a nice cozy home, an exciting wardrobe, and like cooking food at home with lit candles on the table type of everyday luxury. It's like life should be nice every day. Your home should be cozy and tidy and feel good for the soul to be in, you know? It doesn't matter if the dining chairs are Vitra or IKEA. It's the overall effect of calm and prettiness that matters. And looking nice and eating well, going to the gym, those are also like things that belong to the way we look at as a good life. So like, truly picture this for a moment, a society like this, where you can more or less choose an education based on your passions rather than on financial factors. And growing up never worrying that you'll end up very poor, nor either picturing that you might one day become really rich, but instead just like take for granted that you will be middle class, like financial middle class, not necessarily cultural middle class, and that society will more or less take care of you when you're in need. Like, what does that do to a person to grow up like this? I mean, I can only speak for me and David, who did grow up feeling like this. And since then, we have like, as adults, been dealing with money problems and money successes and living in societies with much more prevalent and hard to ignore class systems. And even though I've now been like out in a much more wealth-obsessed world and been living both on tiny budgets and comfortable budgets, I can say that yes, money is more important to me now. Living in an insanely expensive city and working, full-time as a self-employed creative without much work security, of course money factors in more now. But I have to say that at my core, like deep in my stomach, I haven't changed really much at all. When I choose my next career move, when I picture a happy life, I'm still the same 17-year-old Jenny. I make decisions based on my passions. I choose career steps based on what I want to spend my time doing, not how much money it will make me. And I still picture a good life the same as I did as a child. A safe, lovely home, some beautiful clothes in my wardrobe, cooking good food and lighting candles, sitting down to eat with someone I love, feeling good about my life, no matter if the dining chair I'm sitting on is Vitra or IKEA. That's my view on it anyway. A good life, working with something that interests you and feeling healthy and in love. What more, really? So that means for me, I'm already there now. My life is fitting the bill very nicely. I don't need anything else. The rest is just frosting. Fun, but not important. And I hope you feel the same way, that despite that extreme wealth seems to be what everyone is screaming at you that you should want and strive for, that you're also feeling that, there are more important things. But I'm also thinking that this must be very dependent on what society you grew up in and how you look at wealth and how to measure a good life. So I want to hear from all of you. What is your society like, and how do you think it has affected your view on happiness and your career decisions and all that? I'm beyond curious, and I think that this is such an important discussion to be had, to ground ourselves and remind ourselves what a good life really looks like. So please share. Also, I will leave a link to that study about trust that I talked about, so go check your own country there. I can't wait to read your comments on all of this, and give me a like if you enjoyed this one, and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't yet, why don't you? And let me know if you want me to make more videos on Swedish culture or London life or whatever going forward. Thank you so much for watching today. Hope to see you next week already, and take care of yourselves till then. And remember, if you're interested in exploring online therapy with the paid partner of today's video, BetterHelp, just click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/mustard. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel. Okay, and thank you guys. See you soon. Bye bye bye.